Okay guys, in today's video we are going to talk about shading. We're going to build on the skills that we learned doing our value skills, and we're going to apply those skills to geometric forms to make them look three-dimensional. We've learned how to draw things with line. Now we're going to add value to make them look as three-dimensional as possible, creating an illusion. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is we're just going to review creating a value scale with the ebony pencil. This is not as big as the first one we did. It's just something to get you warmed up and ready to draw with value. Just to refresh your memory, when we're creating our deepest, darkest values, we are going to be applying a good deal of pressure with the ebony pencil. Again, you don't want to use a regular pencil to create your darkest values. The lead inside of it's not really lead, it's graphite. The graphite inside of the ebony pencil is softer, allowing you to put down more material onto the paper to create those darker values with a little bit more ease. Now I know in the video it's showing up as this kind of reflective silvery middle gray color, but in real life it is a really dark value. The reason it shows up that way in video is because graphite has a metallic property to it. It's going to reflect a little bit of light, and the overhead lights in the art room reflect off of this material, and they make it look sort of shiny in the video, but everybody sort of knows what a dark value is. Again, we apply value in this class with sort of random ellipses. The reason we apply with random ellipses, we want to avoid the overlap. And I'm going to show you really quick what I'm talking about when I say the overlap. If I go in not random rows, and I sort of go about it in these horizontal rows, wherever I overlap, okay, in this region right here, I'm going to get a darker value. So if we keep our marks sort of random and we don't go in these predictable rows, that overlap is less noticeable, and we can get a smoother sort of value. But what I'm doing here, I'm just sort of copying the values I see above. Here I went with the deepest, darkest black I could get. Now I'm trying to copy that middle gray. And to get lighter values, as we discussed earlier, all you want to do is apply less pressure with the pencil. The less pressure and the less repetition that we do in the same spot, the lighter the value is going to be, because we're seeing more of the paper and we're seeing less of the graphite material on the paper. Okay, so you guys can fill in the rest of that as a sort of warm-up. I'm going to move on because we've already talked about that, and I'm going to show you guys shading on geometric forms. Okay, now to do this, we sort of need to understand light sources and how they affect forms. If you guys can see, it's not really a great light source, but on the ebony pencil, you can see that really bright highlight down the middle and a little cast shadow off to the side. And that's because the dominant light source for this video is coming from up and over here. So it's shining down on the pencil this way, it's casting a shadow on that side and creating a highlight along that ridge. Now on these forms, they've given you a little light outline of a cast shadow. Okay, if the shadow is predominantly on this side of the ball, then we know that the light source is going to be coming from up here. Okay, so understanding where that light source is at is a really important step, because that's going to tell us where we're going to have our lightest lights and our darkest darks. Okay, so if this is a sphere and a light source is coming from up here, we're going to have a highlight right here in this region. And to create our highlights or our lightest values, we are going to do our absolute best to leave that part of the paper, that little tiny circle, as light as possible. So we're not going to apply any pencil to that. We're going to shade around it really, really lightly with the ebony pencil to create our first light value. Okay, and as we work across the sphere, across this three-dimensional form, light is going to be hitting it less and less as it gets to the back end of it. Okay, so if you want to put in your core shadow first to sort of get warmed up, that core shadow is going to happen in this region right here. Okay, so I'm going to go in with my ebony pencil and I'm going to apply a core shadow doing my random oval or ellipse shading in that darkest spot, and I'm overlapping a bunch of times to create a really deep, rich, dark value. That's really important. We don't want to just go in and press as hard as we can on the first try, because we're going to dent the paper a lot, and we're going to get something that looks a little less neat with a little less craftsmanship than we are striving to get. Okay. This is a pretty dark area because very little light is hitting it. Value is a pretty straightforward thing to understand if you're thinking about things three-dimensionally. You just want to consider, what does the light hit the most and shade those areas the lightest, and then what does the light hit the least and shade those areas the darkest, because value is the amount of light we see reflected back to our eyes. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to work, and I'm getting a little bit sloppy because I'm trying to go fast. I'm lightening my value by putting less pressure and overlapping a little bit less than I did in my core shadow. This is what we call a midtone. Our midtones are going to be in this region right here of our value scale. And we're going to continue to get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter as we work towards that highlight. And just like I told you guys last class, it's better on your first pass to go a little bit lighter than you should go, because it's so much easier to go back in and add a little bit of graphite to get that darker value than it is to go back and erase. Going back and erasing can cause big smudge marks and create uneven textures, things that are going to jump out to a viewer as being bad craftsmanship, things that don't look like you really meant to do it. And when we make art, it's important to make everything look as intentional as possible so that the viewer doesn't think that you messed up. Okay, I'm just working slowly, pressing very lightly now, those random sort of ellipses. Okay, right now I'm in this region of value, super, super light. Now you'll notice I left a portion down here sort of light. Okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to shade that a little bit lighter than my core shadow, and there's a reason for that. And this is sort of a sophisticated approach that I expect my upper level students to know, but it's nice for you guys to know too. This is called reflected light. Now you have to imagine if a light is shining from over here and it bounces off this surface, this table, it's going to create a little bit of a lighter value on that back edge. And that's just something that's going to make it look a little bit more realistic than normal. Now, here is our outline for our cast shadow. Cast shadows are generally as dark or darker than the core shadow on the object, really close to the object. So up in here, we're going to have a really dark value. And shadows do not have defined edges, so we're going to lessen that pressure out towards the edge so that we don't get that hard outline. Shadows do not have outlines. They're gradients. They get lighter and lighter and lighter as you get closer or further from the object. The further from the object you are, the lighter that value is going to be. So out here I'm just pressing not as hard, still getting some value on the page, but not quite as hard to create that illusion of a shadow sitting on a surface. Okay, so that is a sphere that looks pretty three-dimensional. It no longer looks like a flat circle, it looks like a three-dimensional sphere. My light source is indicated up here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our attention and we're going to focus on the cone and the cube. Okay, now the cone has a cast shadow going in this direction, so our light source again is over here, and the cube has a light source going in this direction, so our light source is going to be over here. Okay, now I'm not going to demonstrate these. I'm going to see if you guys can use your brains. to understand the three-dimensional form of these objects, okay, to shade them to look as realistically as possible. Remember, the first thing you want to do, identify that highlighted zone and leave it white, okay? And when you get done with that, there's one more value scale for you guys to practice. It's at the bottom of the page, and it is a smooth gradation value scale. And on this smooth gradation value scale, you just want a nice even transition from your darkest dark to your whitest white all across. Now, again, I know we've done this before, but practice makes perfect, and I want you guys to do your best. When you get done with this assignment sheet, I want you to take a look at the simple little rubric up here, and I want you to give yourself a grade. This is out of 40 total points, and you are going to be turning this in today before you leave. So again, don't forget to grade yourself, and do not forget to turn it in. If you have questions, let me know.